19 bizarre old Hollywood stories that are totally true. A dead actor nominated for an Oscar. A famous director who kept his mother's corpse at home for years. A beloved actress whose real voice was kept secret from the world. Hollywood's golden age wasn't just about glamour and classic films. It was also filled with stories so bizarre, so utterly strange that they seem impossible to believe. But here's the shocking part. Every single story I'm about to share actually happened. These aren't urban legends or exaggerations. They're documented pieces of Hollywood history that the studios tried desperately to keep hidden from the public. We all know the carefully crafted images of old Hollywood stars, glamorous premieres, perfect publicity photos, the manufactured romances. But behind that polished veneer lurked a world that was stranger than any fiction these studios ever put on screen. From medical oddities to twisted obsessions, from elaborate cover-ups to technological deceptions, these 19 stories reveal the truly bizarre reality of Tinseltown's golden era. And the strangest part? Number one on our list was hidden in plain sight for decades, with millions of moviegoers never realizing they were actually seeing on screen. It's a revelation so bizarre that even today, film historians debate whether it could possibly be true. Before we dive into our countdown, it's important to understand just how different Hollywood was during its golden age. From roughly the 1920s through the 1950s, the major studios weren't just making movies, they were manufacturing entire realities. MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, and others operated as virtual kingdoms, with studio heads ruling like monarchs over every aspect of their stars' professional and personal lives. These studios employed hundreds of people whose sole job was to shape public perception: publicists, fixers, photographers, and ghostwriters who crafted the narratives we still believe today. But this total control also allowed them to hide the truly bizarre realities happening behind the scenes. The stories we're about to explore aren't just strange footnotes in Hollywood history, they're windows into an industry built on illusion, where truth was often far stranger than the fiction being projected onto screens across America. What makes these particular stories so compelling isn't just their bizarreness, but the fact that they're completely, verifiably true, documented in multiple reliable sources, despite the studio's best efforts to keep them hidden. Some were only revealed decades later through memoirs, declassified documents, or technological analysis that wasn't possible during the era itself. As we explore these 19 incredible tales, pay special attention to numbers 7, 4, and 1. They share a surprising connection that reveals just how elaborate Hollywood's deceptions could become. 19. Clark Gable's dentures. Clark Gable, the dashing king of Hollywood, smile made women swoon in classics like Gone with the Wind. But that charming smile hid a shocking secret. By age 32, Gable had lost nearly all his teeth and wore complete dentures. His severe gum disease was reportedly caused by poor childhood nutrition and neglected dental hygiene. But MGM considered this completely unacceptable for their romantic leading man. The studio concocted an elaborate cover-up, creating custom-made dentures for Gable that cost the equivalent of $60,000 in today's money. Pain from these dentures reportedly contributed to Gable's notorious bad breath, which multiple co-stars complained about but were instructed never to mention publicly. More disturbing was the studio's insistence that all photographic evidence of Gable's pre-denture smile be destroyed, allegedly paying thousands to buy and burn early publicity shots. Carol Lombard, Gable's wife, was even known to play pranks involving his dentures, once allegedly dropping them into a surprised producer's drink at a studio party. 18. Judy Garland's studio-enforced diet. The beloved star of The Wizard of Oz endured one of Hollywood's most disturbing and bizarre behind-the-scenes ordeals. As a teenage actress at MGM, Garland was subjected to a studio-mandated diet that defies belief. Studio head Louis B. Mayer, concerned about her weight, placed her on a regimen that consisted almost exclusively of chicken soup, black coffee, cigarettes to suppress appetite, and diet pills, the latter being amphetamines that would eventually contribute to her lifelong addiction issues. Perhaps most bizarre was MGM's Special Diet Contract, a legally binding document that allowed the studio to fine Garland if she gained weight. Studio employees were assigned to monitor her food intake around the clock, with one executive reportedly instructed to sit outside her restaurant bathroom stall to ensure she didn't purge her food. Studio even arranged for a doctor to wire her jaw shut at one point to prevent eating. When filming The Wizard of Oz, 16-year-old Garland was forced to wear a painful corset-like device that constricted her torso to appear slimmer on camera, despite already being a healthy weight for her age. And if you think that treatment sounds cruel, wait until you hear about our next story, one that involves Hollywood's most outrageous posthumous prank. 17. John Barrymore's final prank. John Barrymore, the legendary actor from the illustrious Barrymore family, was almost as famous for his outrageous behavior as for his acting talents. But his final appearance in Hollywood might be the most bizarre story of all, because it happened after he died. When Barrymore passed away in 1942, his friends decided to honor his notorious prankster reputation with one final outlandish stunt. According to multiple witnesses, including director Raoul Walsh, they borrowed Barrymore's corpse from the funeral home before his burial. The group, which allegedly included actors Errol Flynn and W.C. Fields, propped the dead Barrymore in a chair in Walsh's living room. When a drunken Flynn arrived home and discovered what appeared to be Barrymore sitting in the dimly lit room, he reportedly nearly had a heart attack before realizing it was his friend's corpse. While some details of this story have been debated, enough credible witnesses have confirmed that some version of this macabre prank did indeed occur. The bizarre incident became Hollywood legend and inspired scenes in the 1981 film S.O.B., and Peter Sellers reportedly requested a similar prank be played with his body after his death. 16. Thelma Todd's mysterious death. Thelma Todd, beautiful comedic actress who starred alongside the Marx Brothers and Laurel and Hardy, became the center of one of Hollywood's most bizarre and unsolved mysteries. On the morning of December 16, 1935, Todd was found dead in her car, parked in a garage above her restaurant. The official cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning, but the circumstances surrounding it were so strange that the case remains controversial to this day. Todd had attended a party the night before, and her body was discovered wearing a mauve and silver evening gown, mink coat, and diamond jewelry, but oddly, with blood on her face and other signs suggesting her body had been moved. The garage where she was found was locked from the outside, her car keys were missing, and she was positioned in a way that many investigators found impossible for self-harm. Adding to the strangeness, Todd had received death threats from both the notorious gangster Lucky Luciano, who wanted to open a gambling operation in her restaurant, and her ex-husband, who still held partial ownership of her business. Perhaps the most bizarre element was how quickly the case was closed as an accidental death, despite glaring inconsistencies. Some historians believe studio pressure influenced the investigation, as Todd was under contract to Hal Roach Studios. Her death threatened multiple ongoing productions. For decades afterward, rumors persisted that her body had actually been discovered at another location entirely and moved to cover up a murder. Speaking of studio pressure, our next story reveals how the transition to sound created a bizarre wave of tragedy that Hollywood executives desperately tried to hide from the public. 15. Silent film actors' tragic ends over talkies. When sound revolutionized cinema in the late 1920s, it didn't just change how movies were made, it triggered a wave of bizarre and tragic events that studio publicity departments worked overtime to conceal. Multiple silent film stars, unable to transition to talkies due to heavy accents, squeaky voices, or speech impediments, reportedly met tragic ends rather than face the termination of their careers. Perhaps the strangest case was that of Hungarian actor Victor Varkony, who hired a voice coach who made him speak with marbles in his mouth for hours each day in a desperate attempt to eliminate his accent. The bizarre practice led to him choking so severely during one session that he nearly died, ironically from trying to save his career by adapting to sound. Swedish actor Einar Hansen allegedly drove his car off a cliff upon learning his accent would end his American film career, though studios reported it as an accident. Most disturbing were the voice doubles, an industry practice kept secret for decades, where silent stars with unsuitable voices would mouth words on camera, while voice actors hidden off-screen would speak their lines live during filming. In several documented cases, actors had nervous breakdowns upon hearing their new voices for the first time at premieres, with at least two reportedly rushing from theaters to attempt self-harm after realizing how dramatically different they sounded from their actual voices. 14. The MGM Dwarf Village. One of the most bizarre yet little-known aspects of Hollywood's golden age was the existence of what became known as MGM's Dwarf Village. a specially constructed housing community built by the studio specifically for little people working on films like The Wizard of Oz. Located near the MGM lot in Culver City, this unique neighborhood featured custom-built smaller-scale houses with proportionally sized furniture, fixtures, and facilities designed for the comfort of dwarf and midget actors. What made this community particularly strange were the rules MGM imposed on its residents. The studio maintained strict control, including a bizarre appearance clause that required residents to remain in costume when going out in public, essentially forcing them to perpetually embody the fantasy characters they played on screen. This was allegedly to protect them from public curiosity, but effectively turned their private lives into an extension of MGM's marketing. The community had its own miniature grocery store, post office, and even a specially designed bar where the studio could monitor their activities. Most disturbing were the height inspections. MGM reportedly maintained a policy that only performers under a certain height could live there, requiring periodic measurements and evicting anyone who didn't meet their standards. The community existed until the late 1950s, yet was kept so secretive that many Hollywood historians didn't confirm its existence until decades later through property records and personal accounts from former residents. 13. Technicolor torture. The glorious, vibrant colors of Golden Age Hollywood classics came at a bizarre and sometimes torturous price for the actors filmed under the early Technicolor process. The revolutionary 3-strip Technicolor cameras required extraordinary amounts of light, so much that sets would reach temperatures of over 100 degrees, with actors forced to work under lights so intense they caused eye damage and severe dehydration. The most bizarre aspect was the makeup required, known as Technicolor makeup or pancake. This specially formulated makeup was essentially industrial-grade paint applied directly to actors' skin, a bright blue-green shade for men and brick red for women, colors that looked completely grotesque in person but somehow translated to natural flesh tones on Technicolor film. Actors described looking like walking corpses or alien beings between takes, unable to be seen in public during production. The makeup was so thick and toxic that it had to be removed with industrial solvents that left skin raw and damaged. Most disturbing were the Technicolor health waivers, documents studios required actors to sign acknowledging the potential for temporary vision impairment, skin discoloration, and heat prostration. 12. Hitchcock's refrigerator obsession. Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense, had a bizarre fixation that influenced multiple films but remained largely unknown to audiences. A strange obsession with refrigerators and their potential as murder weapons or body storage. This peculiar preoccupation went far beyond normal research for his films and became a personal fascination that crew members found deeply disturbing. Hitchcock reportedly maintained a collection of photographs and news clippings about refrigerator deaths and murders, keeping them in a special file he referred to as his cooling-off period. During production of Psycho, he allegedly had a real refrigerator brought to the set, not for any scene in the film, but simply to open between takes and stare inside contemplatively, unnerving the cast. On the set of Rear Window, he supposedly instructed the prop department to fill a refrigerator with increasingly decayed food items throughout the shoot, regularly checking on its progress and taking photographs. Perhaps most bizarre was his reported habit of arriving at dinner parties with a peculiar gift, detailed sketches of how the host's refrigerator could be modified to preserve a human body. 11. Dead actor wins Oscar nomination. Hollywood's most bizarre Oscar story involves actor James Dean, who achieved the unique and macabre distinction of receiving an Academy Award nomination after his death. What makes this truly strange isn't just the posthumous honor, but the elaborate lengths the studio went to in promoting a deceased actor for the award. After Dean died in a car crash in September 1955, Warner Brothers faced a dilemma with his completed but unreleased film, Giant. Rather than downplaying their deceased star, they launched what many consider Hollywood's most bizarre Oscar campaign. The studio allegedly hired an actor who could imitate Dean's voice to record interviews about his performance, which were then distributed to radio stations as if Dean were still alive discussing his own work. They reportedly also commissioned a life-sized wax figure of Dean that was displayed at screenings of the film, positioned in theater lobbies as if the actor were actually present at his own premiere. Most disturbing was the studio's James Dean Speaks from Beyond marketing strategy. Publicity materials suggesting the actor was somehow communicating his desire for an Oscar for from the afterlife. This campaign resulted in Dean receiving a Best Actor nomination for Giant in 1957, over a year after his death. 10. MGM Secret Experimental Farm. One of Hollywood's strangest hidden facilities was MGM's secretive experimental animal farm, located miles from their main studio lot and operated under extreme confidentiality for over 2 decades. This wasn't just any studio animal facility. It was a bizarre genetic and training laboratory designed to create and maintain animals specifically engineered for film work. Established in the 1930s, the farm reportedly conducted unusual breeding programs to produce animals with specific cinematic traits, horses with uniquely photogenic gaits, birds trained to land on specific marks, and even attempts to breed smaller, more manageable lions for the studio's famous roaring logo. Former employees claimed the facility maintained a reject section housing animals with unpredictable behaviors or physical characteristics deemed unsuitable for film. Some kept there for years in a strange limbo, neither usable nor releasable. Perhaps the most bizarre aspect was the animal actor conditioning program, where animals were subjected to increasingly intense stimuli, including heat lamps, artificial environments, and unusual sensory experiences, to prepare them for the unnatural conditions of film sets. This allegedly included a room called the desensitizer, where animals were gradually acclimated to the intense heat and noise of Technicolor film production. 9. Carl Switzer's bizarre death. Carl Alfalfa. Switzer, the iconic child star from The Little Rascals, Our Gang comedies, met one of Hollywood's strangest and most tragically absurd ends, a bizarre dog-related dispute that ended in his shooting death. By 1959, Switzer's Hollywood career had largely faded, and he was working as a dog trainer and hunting guide. The bizarre chain of events began when Switzer helped retrieve a client's lost hunting dog. After returning the dog, Switzer demanded a $50 reward plus $15 for the bar tab he had accumulated while celebrating finding the dog. A few days later, believing he deserved more money, Switzer decided to confront the dog's owner, Moses Stilts. What happened next was one of Hollywood's most peculiar confrontations. Switzer arrived at Stilts' home intoxicated, demanding more money for finding the dog. The argument escalated until Switzer allegedly pulled a knife. During the ensuing struggle, Stilts grabbed a gun and shot Switzer in the groin. The former child star bled to death on the way to the hospital, his last words reportedly being, "I've been shot." Many newspapers gave the passing of the former child star just a few lines or no mention at all. The man who shot him, Moses Stilts, was cleared on grounds of self-defense, though witnesses later disputed his version of events. In a final strange twist, the shooting location would decades later become a souvenir shop selling alfalfa memorabilia, with many customers unaware of the site's dark history. 8. Hitchcock's body part collection. Alfred Hitchcock appears again on our list with a bizarre behind-the-scenes secret that few outside his production team knew about. His strange collection of prosthetic body parts that he insisted on personally approving for his films. Far beyond normal props, this collection took on an almost ritualistic importance to the director, becoming a disturbing obsession that crew members found deeply unsettling. According to multiple sources, including his longtime art director Robert Boyle, Hitchcock maintained a locked cabinet in his office containing dozens of meticulously organized prosthetic hands, eyes, ears, and other body parts, each carefully labeled and categorized. Before filming scenes involving violence or corpses, Hitchcock would reportedly lay these pieces out on his desk, arranging and rearranging them while discussing scenes with increasingly specific requirements for their appearance. What made this practice particularly bizarre was Hitchcock's insistence that these prosthetics be made to resemble specific people, often individuals who had annoyed or criticized him. Bernard Herrmann, Hitchcock's frequent musical collaborator, claimed the director once proudly showed him a prosthetic hand that was deliberately modeled after a critic who had written a negative review, explaining it would be used in a scene where a bird pecked a corpse. The director reportedly took special delight in scenes where these body parts would be mutilated on screen. Most disturbing was Hitchcock's retirement plan for these items. He allegedly left instructions that upon his death, certain prosthetics should be anonymously mailed to specific Hollywood figures with cryptic notes. While his estate apparently disregarded this macabre request, one prosthetic eye supposedly did make its way to a prominent producer who had once refused to fund one of Hitchcock's projects. 7. The Misfits. Curse. The Misfits, 1961, remains one of Hollywood's most notoriously cursed productions, with a series of bizarre tragedies surrounding it that seem almost too coincidental to be believed. This classic film, written by Arthur Miller specifically for his then-wife Marilyn Monroe, would become the final completed film for both Monroe and her co-star, Clark Gable. The bizarre circumstances began during filming in the Nevada desert, where temperatures reached 119 degrees, causing frequent illness among cast and crew. Director John Huston's gambling addiction led to him frequently abandoning the set to gamble away much of the film's budget in nearby casinos. Meanwhile, Monroe's marriage to Miller was disintegrating during production, causing her to miss days of filming and require multiple takes for even simple scenes. She would overdose and pass away just 19 months after the film's release. Perhaps most eerie was Clark Gable's fate. At 59, he insisted on doing his own stunts despite the extreme heat, including being dragged across the desert floor by a truck. Just days after filming completed, Gable suffered a heart attack and died, with many blaming the physical strain of the production. Montgomery Clift, already in declining health, told friends the film was cursed and that he would be next to go. True to his prediction, he died a few years later. The film's troubled production, followed by the deaths of its 3 stars in such quick succession, cemented its reputation as one of Hollywood's most bizarrely cursed projects. 6. Howard Hughes's Hollywood Eccentricities. Howard Hughes may be remembered as an aviation pioneer and business tycoon, but his time as a Hollywood producer and studio owner revealed some of the most bizarre behaviors in film industry history. His peculiar Hollywood reign included some truly strange episodes that went far beyond typical eccentric behavior. As owner of RKO Pictures, Hughes developed increasingly peculiar production demands. He allegedly installed a special private bathroom on the studio lot that only he could use, complete with specially designed tissue boxes and soap dispensers to avoid contamination. When visiting film sets, he reportedly wore tissue boxes as shoes to avoid germs and communicated with directors through handwritten notes even when standing beside them. His most bizarre directive might have been his insistence that all female contract players' measurements be photographed and cataloged from multiple angles, creating a disturbing inventory he would review privately. Perhaps the strangest incident occurred during production of The Outlaw, starring Jane Russell. Hughes became obsessed with the proper display of Russell's cleavage, going so far as to design a specialized bra for her using aircraft technology principles. When she refused to wear it because of discomfort, he reportedly monitored daily footage with a microscope to check for proper movement and containment. When Hughes eventually retreated into complete seclusion, he maintained control over his Hollywood investments through bizarre proxy communications, sometimes not speaking directly to studio executives for years while still making production decisions. 5. The mysterious death of George Reeves. The strange death of George Reeves, television's original Superman, remains one of Hollywood's most persistent mysteries, with circumstances so bizarre they seem pulled from a film noir plot. On June 16, 1959, Reeves was found dead of a gunshot wound in his Benedict Canyon home. While officially ruled a self-harm death, the bizarre circumstances surrounding the incident have fueled conspiracy theories for decades. The evening's strange events included Reeves and his fiancée Leonore Lemon entertaining guests when, according to witnesses, an apparently cheerful Reeves excused himself and went upstairs. Moments later, a gunshot was heard. Mysteriously, guests waited a considerable time before calling police, and some evidence appeared to have been tampered with before authorities arrived. Adding to the strangeness, Reeves's body showed bruising inconsistent with the official explanation, and some reports claimed the gun was found on the floor rather than near his body, despite having no fingerprints on it. What makes this case particularly bizarre were the multiple potential motives surrounding his death. Reeves had been involved in a long affair with Toni Mannix, wife of MGM executive Eddie Mannix, who had mob connections and allegedly ordered hits on people who crossed him. Meanwhile, Reeves's career frustrations after being typecast as Superman had allegedly led to conflicts with studio executives. Perhaps strangest of all, Reeves had been preparing to marry Lemon and had booked their honeymoon for the following week, making the timing of his death particularly suspicious. The case remains officially closed, despite these unresolved questions. 4. The tragic story of Peg Antwistle. Perhaps no Hollywood story captures the dark side of fame more bizarrely than that of Peg Antwistle, the actress who became more famous for how she died than for any role she played. In September 1932, a hiker found a woman's shoe, jacket, and purse at the base of the Hollywood sign. Inside was a farewell note reading, "I am afraid I am a coward. I am sorry for everything. If I had done this a long time ago, it would have saved a lot of pain." The body of 24-year-old actress Peg Antwistle was found in the ravine below. What makes this story particularly strange is that Antwistle had actually climbed a workman's ladder to the top of the 50-foot H in the Hollywood sign, then reading Hollywoodland, and ended her life by jumping from the very symbol of the industry that she felt had rejected her. In a bizarre twist, a letter arrived at her home the day after her death, offering her the lead role in a play about a woman who takes her own life. Perhaps the strangest aspect of this tragic tale is its bizarre afterlife. Multiple witnesses have reported seeing a disoriented blonde woman in 1930s clothing near the Hollywood sign who vanishes when approached. Others claim to smell a strong gardenia perfume, Antwistle's signature scent, when no flowers are present. The story has inspired multiple films and plays, making Antwistle more famous in death than she ever was in life, and creating one of Hollywood's most persistent ghost stories. 3. The strange death of Rudolph Valentino. The passing of silent film idol Rudolph Valentino in 1926 triggered one of the most bizarre series of events in Hollywood history, involving mass hysteria, alleged curses, and a mysterious woman in black whose identity remained unknown for decades. When the 31-year-old star died unexpectedly from peritonitis following an ulcer surgery, the public reaction was so extreme that it bordered on mass psychosis. The strange circumstances began with his medical treatment. Doctors applied hot towels to his abdomen that were so scorching they caused severe burns, potentially contributing to his death. When his body was displayed for public viewing in New York, the funeral home was unprepared for the 100,000-plus fans who arrived, resulting in a riot that caused $20,000 in damage, equivalent to over $300,000 today, and multiple injuries. Windows were smashed as frantic fans tried to touch their idol one last time, and several attempted self-harm in grief. Perhaps the most bizarre aspect was the appearance of a veiled woman in black who visited Valentino's grave every year on the anniversary of his death, leaving a single red rose. Her identity remained a mystery for decades, spawning countless theories and imitators. Multiple women eventually claimed to be the original woman in black, including former silent actress Dietra Flame, who claimed Valentino had visited her in the hospital as a child and she had promised to bring him flowers if she outlived him. The annual appearance of the mysterious mourner continued for nearly 50 years, creating one of Hollywood's most enduring and strange traditions. 2. The feud between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. The legendary feud between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford stands as Hollywood's most bizarre and theatrical rivalry, evolving from professional competition into an almost theatrical hatred that produced some of the strangest behind-the-scenes stories in film history. While many actor rivalries existed in old Hollywood, none reached the bizarre extremes of Davis and Crawford. Their animosity allegedly began in the 1930s over a man, actor Franchot Tone, whom Crawford married after allegedly seducing him while he was involved with Davis. By the time they co-starred in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, 1962, their hatred had reached bizarre proportions. During filming, Davis reportedly installed a Coca-Cola machine on set. Crawford was on the Pepsi board of directors following her marriage to Pepsi's CEO, while Crawford allegedly wore weights under her costume for a scene where Davis had to drag her across the floor, causing Davis to strain her back. The most outlandish incident occurred at the 1963 Academy Awards, when Davis was nominated for Best Actress for Baby Jane, but Crawford wasn't. Crawford contacted the other nominees who couldn't attend and offered to accept on their behalf. When Anne Bancroft won instead of Davis, Crawford gleefully pushed past Davis backstage to accept the award, creating one of the most awkward and bizarre moments in Oscar history. Davis later claimed Crawford campaigned against her winning. The feud continued until Crawford's death in 1977, with Davis famously quipping, "You should never say bad things about the dead, only good. Joan Crawford is dead. Good." 1. The Wizard of Oz self-harm myth. For decades, one of Hollywood's most persistent legends involved the Wizard of Oz, and the bizarre claim that a Munchkin actor had committed self-harm during filming, with the tragic event allegedly captured on camera in the film itself. This macabre urban legend claimed that in the scene where Dorothy, Scarecrow, and Tin Man walked down the yellow brick road into the distance, a small dark figure could be seen hanging from a tree in the background, purportedly a Munchkin actor who took his life on set. What makes this story truly bizarre isn't just its gruesomeness, but how thoroughly it permeated popular culture despite being completely false. The supposed hanging munchkin was actually a large bird stretching its wings, one of several live birds placed in the background to create depth in MGM's elaborate forest set. When the film was later shown on smaller television screens with poorer resolution, this bird's movement created an optical illusion that sparked the dark rumor. The strangest aspect of this Hollywood myth is how it persisted and grew despite all evidence to the contrary. No Munchkin actor died during production, and all 124 little people hired for the film were successfully accounted for after filming concluded. Yet the rumor became so widespread that MGM actually released an official statement in the 1990s debunking it after the advent of home video led to obsessive frame-by-frame analysis by viewers. Perhaps most bizarre is how this false story overshadowed the actual strange incidents from the production, including multiple serious accidents, a makeup disaster that hospitalized the original Tin Man actor, and the infamous asbestos snow that rained down on the actors in the poppy field scene. The Wizard of Oz production was genuinely filled with bizarre and dangerous incidents, yet the completely fabricated self-harm story became the film's most enduring behind-the-scenes legend. The persistence of this myth reveals Hollywood's unique relationship with truth and fiction, how a completely false story can become real in popular consciousness while the actual bizarre realities of filmmaking remain hidden from view. In many ways, it's the perfect encapsulation of Hollywood itself. What we think we know is often illusion, while the truly strange truth remains just out of frame. What makes these bizarre stories so fascinating isn't just their strangeness, but what they reveal about the gap between Hollywood's carefully crafted public image and its behind-the-scenes reality. Think about it. These weren't just odd footnotes in cinema history. They represent an entire industry built on illusion, where even reality itself was carefully manufactured and controlled. Did you notice how several of these stories connected to each other? The Technicolor torture that Judy Garland endured in The Wizard of Oz happened simultaneously with MGM's bizarre dwarf village housing her co-stars and the secret animal farm conditioning Toto for his role. These weren't isolated incidents, but rather pieces of a larger system of control and manipulation that defined Golden Age Hollywood. The most disturbing aspect is how successfully these bizarre realities were hidden from the public. Without technological advances like home video, allowing frame-by-frame analysis, without the eventual memoirs of aging stars who no longer feared studio retribution, and without the declassification of certain studio documents, many of these stories might have remained buried forever. For every bizarre tale we've uncovered, how many others remain hidden, their witnesses and evidence long gone? The golden age of Hollywood wasn't just about manufacturing movies, it was about manufacturing an entire alternate reality where these bizarre incidents either didn't exist or were transformed into something more palatable for public consumption. Understanding these bizarre chapters of Hollywood history doesn't diminish the magic of classic cinema. If anything, it makes these achievements even more remarkable. Knowing the strange reality behind The Wizard of Oz or Hitchcock's masterpieces adds new layers of appreciation for what these filmmakers accomplished despite, or sometimes because of, the bizarre circumstances surrounding their productions. These stories also help us understand our current relationship with celebrity and entertainment. Today's carefully curated social media presences and public relations campaigns are direct descendants of the studio system's image management, though perhaps less successful at maintaining absolute control. When modern celebrities experience public scandals or reveal unexpected aspects of their lives, they're participating in a tradition of revelation and concealment that dates back to Hollywood's earliest days. I believe there's something valuable in acknowledging both the artistry of classic Hollywood and the bizarre realities that existed just outside the frame. The films themselves remain timeless achievements, perhaps made even more impressive by our understanding of the strange circumstances surrounding their creation. These bizarre stories don't detract from Golden Age Hollywood's magic. They remind us that this magic was created by real human beings in all their complex, sometimes disturbing, and often bizarre humanity. By separating Hollywood myth from Hollywood reality, we can appreciate these classic films with clearer eyes, not just as entertainment, but as artifacts of an industry that was itself the greatest show of all, with bizarre secrets and practices that rivaled anything it put on screen. And there you have it, 19 of the most bizarre stories from Hollywood's golden age that, despite their strangeness, are absolutely true. From Clark Gable's secret dentures to the elaborate Technicolor tortures From Hitchcock's macabre collections to the strangest Oscar campaign ever conducted, these tales reveal the extraordinary reality behind cinema's most glamorous era. If you enjoyed this journey through Hollywood's strangest truths, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more classic film enthusiasts. And if you haven't already subscribed, click that button below to join our community of Golden Age Hollywood lovers. I release new videos exploring different aspects of classic cinema every week. I'm especially interested in your thoughts on these bizarre stories. Did any of them particularly surprise you? Do you know of other strange Hollywood tales that deserve attention in a future video? Or perhaps you're related to someone who worked in the studio system and have heard first-hand accounts of Hollywood's bizarre realities? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love continuing these conversations. Next week, we'll be exploring Hollywood's forgotten heroes, the stunt performers who risked everything for cinema. A look at the daredevils who performed death-defying feats without recognition or modern safety equipment. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thank you for spending this time with me exploring the stranger side of classic Hollywood. Until next time, remember that sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction, especially in Tinseltown.